Hello, in this tutorial we actually gonna make some soft smoky trail texture in Substance. So let me just isolate it for you. So as you can see here, we kinda need this trail to be a little bit more smoky and soft, and it serves as a background for our other trails that are pretty defined, if that makes sense. So as you can see here, like this one is really defined, it's got hard edge, and we just need a bit more softer and smooth, basically a little bit blurred smoky trail to serve as a background for the trail. So in the first tutorial we're actually gonna focus on this in Substance, and in the next parts we're just gonna explore a different shapes, like for example that one. Okay, so let's jump to Substance and let's start creating this soft smoky trail. Okay, so before we start, I just want to say that someone commented under one of my videos saying that it would be nice to have some sort of keystroke overlay of the shortcuts, and the software I'm using to record my videos is Camtasia, and I did some tests and it seems like it's working, although it doesn't recognize some of the keystrokes, like for example space or just single letters. So if you would like to point me to the right direction for this, for any software that actually does the keystrokes overlay, so basically I can display anything I type on my keyboard, so you can actually see what kind of shortcuts I'm using at the time. Something that hopefully gonna help you out, so you can actually see what I'm pressing on my keyboard during those tutorials. Otherwise I'm just gonna use the basic Camtasia keystrokes, and they're not ideal, but you know, many times they I think it's better than nothing. So thank you so much for that comment, and yeah, if you have any more suggestions that could help you out to you know, understand the tutorials a little bit better, like those keystroke overlays, feel free to comment it and give me some ideas. So yeah, let's start making this soft trail texture. So I'm gonna start with shape. I need to scale it down a bit to get that kind of stripe. I'm gonna use transform as well, just in case if I have to move it around later on. I'm gonna blur it. Next, I'm gonna use this blur, and I'm gonna increase the blur to the high number, maybe 100, and now I'm just gonna scale it back down a bit. Okay, I'm gonna use another shape node. I'm gonna go for a soft circle, increase its styling, and maybe scale it down a little bit. What I want to do, basically I want to get rid of some of the data from this texture to create a little bit more variation in this texture. So I've got this, and I'm gonna run it through a splatter node. I think for the pattern size is something that you have to experiment with. I think 600 might work for me, but feel free to just, you know, put any value in here. And I'm just gonna add rotation, variation, and now I'm just gonna zoom in a little bit and decrease the gain. And there's this order as well if you need just change the texture a little bit. Size variation helps a lot as well. And now maybe let's try to use blend and subtract this from our very basic trail texture. And then yeah, it seems like this is what we've got. So now maybe let's go back to the splatter and let's see what options do we have. So I'm just gonna keep it 0.4 and for the gain, and just play with the disorder maybe a little bit. And you can use zoom as well if you wanna just a little bit more variation in your texture. So the problem right now we have is that if you run it through transform and do the offset, we've got this. But don't worry about this, because we're gonna make it disappear later on using the blur. So if I'll just run it through the blur as a test, as you can see, we're getting this blur. So we're losing a little bit of data, but it doesn't matter, because the main issue that we have here is just disappearing. And then we're just going to introduce other nodes to break it further. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of those two, just to show you that, you know, there isn't a problem, but don't worry about it for now. I'm going to run it through histogram scan next. To make this a little bit more brighter. And also I want to warp it with Perlin noise. I'm going to decrease the scale of Perlin noise because I just want a little bit warp there. Feel free to experiment with the intensity, like 5 for example, if you want to a little bit more intense warp. But I'm just going to stick with something like this for now, so 2.5. And now I'm just going to blur it to get rid of that line, because I want this to be tileable. So I just want to show you that line again. As you can see, it's here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put intensity fairly low, plug it in, and it seems that line is disappearing. So I'm just going to run it through that blur until it's completely gone. So I think it's around here. Okay. Next I'm gonna use a multi-directional warp grayscale, and for the intensity input I'm just gonna use that texture with some blur. But I'm gonna just decrease the amount on the y-axis to get something like this. And in here we can play with the direction, but what I want to do, I want to change mode to min. And now if you start increasing the intensity, you can see we're kind of getting this smoky effect in that texture. So feel free to just experiment with a couple options and see what you could achieve. I'm just gonna go back to our noise that we're using for the blur, warp, and try to get a little bit different options so I can see what I actually can do with that texture later on. So as you can see, I think those shapes are really cool, because it makes the texture a little bit more smoky. So I'm just gonna leave it like this, and I'm just gonna keep going. I'm gonna introduce another warp, and I want to use Perlin noise again, but with a very low scale. I'm gonna use intensity for the warp on a quite high number, like 10. See if I can maybe invert grayscale to see if I'm gonna get actually different results, and I'm gonna run it through blur as well with the default settings. And now if I'm gonna go back to Perlin noise and use disorder, I'm kind of looking for the cool shape. Okay, so I'm gonna stick to this. So this side is basically a little bit larger, and the other is just a little bit smaller, and that gives us the variety. So if I'm gonna run it through transform and play with the offset, you can see I personally think it's just tiled really nicely now, and we've got enough variety in the texture. Okay, And now let's see if we can blend it with our original texture. I'm just gonna use maybe subtract, so you get a little bit more smoky effect if that's what you need, but I'm just gonna keep checking what other options do I have. Having multiply works pretty well. Max as well, and min obviously just gives us a lot more detail in the texture, so maybe this is what you want. So I think I'm gonna keep it on the max blending mode. I'm gonna just check my tiling again, so transform, check the offset. We don't have any lines, so it's tileable. And I think we got this really nice soft trial. I'm just gonna run it through another warp just in case. Parallel noise, low scale, and maybe high intensity. I'm gonna start with 10. And I think I want to blur this parallel noise even further. Okay, so I'm just gonna blur it maybe 16, quality 1. Just so we could get a more variation in the shapes. And as a last thing, I'm gonna put blur. Okay, so basically currently we've got those heart shapes, and this might look really cool, but in case you have to do your test in the engine, so I'll start with that texture, and I'll also put auto levels in the end. So I'll start with that texture, see if it gives you results that you want. If not, start increasing the intensity on the blur, and that's gonna give you a lot more soft shapes. Another thing now is that while having selected auto levels and a little bit more blurry texture, you might want to go back, for example, to the splatter and start changing the gain. And basically you can actually see what this might give you in terms of your texture variety. So I'm just gonna press Ctrl Z to and go back to my original shape, and obviously we've got all those warp nodes that we've put in there, and we can just keep modifying those until we are happy with the results. So how I usually work, I'm create like a base texture like this, put it in the engine, create a particle system, see if it works, and then I'm just modifying those back in Substance and keep exporting it until I'm happy with the results. Okay. So right now I'm just looking for the shape variations, because I don't want this texture to be straight. Okay, so that's the one way to create this soft smoky shape, although I came across a really nice way to create like a really cool cross section, and that's going to give us a really nice variation. So it's not like a straight shape as you see here, it's just it's got a lot more variation. The only issue I have with this is that it's not available actually for older version of Substance. So if you have a very old version of Substance, then feel free to just go with this option. But if you have a newer version, you can actually use stuff like parallel noise with the low scale, and then you can actually put cross section here, that node. I would change the drawing style to gradient mirrored, and then histogram scan to isolate that curve, as you can see here. And now you can obviously go back to your parallel noise and play with the scale, but I would keep it something like maybe this. And obviously in the cross section you can just change this slider to get something that you actually want. So if we select our auto levels now and plug this in, you can see we got a lot more variation now. Okay, the only issue right now is that we're missing those kind of nice details that we had. So I'm just gonna go back to my splatter node and maybe play with gain. So we get this nice variation. I'm not sure if you can actually see because of the video compression, but in here it's slightly brighter than in here. And I think it's just gonna move really nicely in the engine, because that will be our intensity for the color and the transparency probably as well. You could also, in the splatter, if you want a bit more data like this, try maybe playing with zoom. As you can see, as I start going down with zoom, I got a lot more data with those gray, between the gray and those white spaces in the texture. And then you can play with the gain and get even further with this. What you can do as well, if you want a bit more softy shapes on the side, you might go back to your histogram scan and basically modify contrast, and I'll probably add blur to it as well. Okay, so let me select auto levels again. Histogram scan. Splatter, and now you have to just take off some of the gain. And we're getting like a really nice shapes here. I think this is like too bright, so it would be nice to get a bit more variety in here. And I think it's in this blend. Maybe subtract if you want a bit more smoky shapes. But other than that, just keep tweaking those values, and hopefully gonna give you the results that you want. Bear in mind you still got those warps that you can modify and get a lot more variety in your texture. So I would just say, play with those values, export the texture into the engine, plug it into your particle system, see if it works. If it doesn't, go back and keep modifying it in a substance. But for now, I'll keep it like this. But yeah, I really don't like this white that comes across here, so let's try to get rid of it. So if you're gonna plug in this one instead of cross section, I think this one works a little bit better. But let's maybe get the cross section as it's, I think, better shape. I'm gonna go to this splatter and try different settings. So I think I'm gonna put gain somewhere around here, but in the blend node actually. I'm gonna play with the opacity. Okay, and I think I really like this because there's variety in the data. So we've got like nice grays and white as well. And so I think I'm just gonna end up with this or this. So we've got nice soft shapes and yeah. Okay. Okay, so this is our original texture. And now I'm just going to replace it with the two that we actually have done in Substance. So that's the first one, and I think it's still looking good. And another one is basically that one. And I think maybe opacity on the trail now is a little bit too strong, but the shapes that we're actually getting from this, I think those look really, really cool for this soft background trail. Alright, so I think we covered the soft smoky texture, and in the next parts we're just gonna cover those kind of shapes and this one as well. Maybe I'll throw in some bonus later on. It depends how much time I will have, but that's the plan. Okay? Alright, thanks for watching and see you in the next part.